Hello, everyone, and welcome to True Words Aren't Beautiful. Here I am with my mid-hiatus update because obviously I have not uploaded any of my trip videos, and that is part of my update today because there are a lot of thoughts that I've spent ruminating and meditating upon that are worth sharing today, and also to give you that status update. So, first of all, I have not done any of the videos because not only did I find out I had 70 minutes of work to do, but I realize I'm going to have to divide them up into several videos, and if I'm going to do that, I might as well have everything. So I went on one climb the other weekend to the province of Marinduque and climbed Mount Malindig, a potentially active stratovolcano, so that's a little more footage. And I will be doing my final climb in Mount Giting this month in Romblon province. So something interesting that's happened is there have been a lot of canceled trips, and there's a synchronicity behind them. Part of that synchronicity is, we have climate change here, and we've had some places where you have the heat index getting as high as 53 or 56 degrees Celsius. That's pretty hot, and you can do the conversion to Fahrenheit if you're American. So the synchronicity here with those trips, besides the fact that the heat is causing lots of problems, is that these were trips I was unable to raise money for. I was unable to raise enough money for the trip itself and for the plane tickets to places like Mount Kalatungan and to Mount Apo. They closed because of forest fires, or potential forest fires. And another place, Mount Batulao, that didn't push through because only 4 people of the required dozen people who needed to sign up for the trip to be a go are what caused the trip to be canceled. 4 people are all that were there. We needed 12, so we couldn't go. So I was bummed initially that I couldn't go, but all 3 of those trips got canceled. And what's even better is, while they may have been redirected, I also saved money on the plane tickets because typically Cebu Pacific, one of the airlines that's cheaper here, does not issue refunds except for very rare instances. Otherwise, you just get credit. So because I didn't purchase a ticket for Cagayan de Oro Airport, since I couldn't raise enough funds to go to Mount Kalatungan, I didn't waste any money on the ticket, and I ended up not missing out on anything because they didn't go to Kalatungan. But they did go to another place, which was still fun, but it wasn't the place I wanted to go to. Then, Mount Apo, only 4 people, including me, were signed up, and there were some other logistics, but because so many people were unable to go there, the airline actually refunded my ticket. So I saved money there. Twice is a coincidence. It's a synchronicity already. 3 times means you're not paying attention, and the universe really wants to emphasize that. So, the past 6 weeks, up until last weekend, I have been at home, dealing with the heat, walking around in my underwear, and taking care of my dogs. During that time, I've always had the belief that if I feel like doing something, I will do it. I have not felt any inclination to pick up my guitar, and for some reason I haven't had any inclination to draw anything. It's better not to force yourself and do something mediocre, as opposed to finding that wave or creating that wave of inspiration and doing something with it. So right now is not the time to force. It's the time to let things sink in and ride the wave when it comes, or create that wave. And at the moment, I am not creating any waves because I'm seeing that there are waves I should be riding, and those waves are inward. I've been going deeper into myself. No kinks there, by the way. And, well, there have been some interesting insights and other synchronicities. But let's talk about that first one. Obviously, financially, I'm not all that great. I have not had any income because of a couple of flakes. I currently owe about $1,400 to my credit card company. And on hand, I have just under $600. Plus an extra $50 someone gave as donation. This ties into a call I had with Kelvin Chin, a very, very great mind, whom I highly recommend, and I'll leave a link to him in the description. And one of the things he asked me about when it comes to this pilgrimage that I'm on is, what am I planning to do after that? And what am I doing to take care of myself? Really difficult questions I should be considering. Don't shoot the messenger, because even if he doesn't agree with my framework, the message still is important. What am I going to do? What am I doing to support myself? Well, I don't want to be a beggar, because he said I sound like I'm a beggar since I've been living on donations the past 6 months. But I have also been teaching, and I have also used my other talents and other opportunities that come my way I never thought of, such as my dogs being approached for a TV commercial, which I will leave in a link in the description. I have been giving acupuncture. I have been giving people art, and they've been buying it. I have had people contributing to my Ko-fi, which is also in a link in the description here, for my writing and my art. There's plenty of talent that you have that you will recognize when you're in nature. Plenty of things that are outside of the urban industrial lifestyle we all live. And part of living in the urban industrial lifestyle is that we get disconnected from ourselves and disconnected from reality. Because when you don't have mobile signal, when you don't even have electricity, and you're taking a dump in a hole on the mountains, in nature, all you have is your equipment and your wits, your experiences, and your adaptability, your creativity. Most importantly, your connection with yourself, with nature, and with the people around you. We do not have that easily or readily available in society. We are disconnected from ourselves, we are disconnected from nature, and we are very disconnected from other people. So, this is the kind of thing that does get me a little bit upset, anxious, and depressed, especially in the financial situation. But at the same time, it's also something that a friend of mine countered by saying, when you're climbing a mountain, as you approach the summit, do you think about your next climb? My answer is no. Typically I don't. I think about where I am in the moment and finishing. I don't even think about what will happen when I need to go down, even if it's steep. I live in the moment because that's all I can do to survive. Whether it's making sure that a leech doesn't crawl into my eyeball, that I don't step in poison ivy if I were in the North American continent, that I don't see anything or step on a snake, or I pay attention to the trail, because if I don't pay attention to the trail, I will miss the markers telling me where I need to go. You are forced to be present when you are in nature. Otherwise, you will die, or you will get lost. You are forced to make friends with the people there, even if you can't stand some of them, because you have to rely on each other if you run out of food, water, supplies, and shelter. I relied on other people's light on my first climb because I didn't have a headlamp. I relied on someone to save my life when I nearly fell off a mountain and he had to grab me from the rope that I was dangling from. I relied on other people's experience to help me with setting up my tent for the very first time and the very first few times. And while some people may say, "Oh, you shouldn't be here, you're inexperienced," not one mountaineer I was with said that to me when I was with them. Yet, some strange Scottish woman said, "You shouldn't be mountaineering, you know nothing, it's dangerous." Well, good for her. She is just another frog in her hole in the ground, as I mentioned in the last video, who looks at her corner of reality and thinks she sees me in my corner of reality. But she doesn't see the totality of that sky. We will get back to that example in a moment. So, another thing that I've seen recently on social media, a couple of memes. The first meme is about an optimist and a pessimist's approach to life. The first one is a wide-eyed, smiling optimist running eagerly to hug life. Life looks big, mean, and scary, and punches the optimist in the face. The pessimist looks grouchy and knows exactly what life is preparing for it. And instead of waiting for life to punch him in the face, the pessimist punches himself in the face, while life looks on, surprised and completely confused. Well, what I can say is, I am neither of those. What I am is the guy who is going to look at life, flip the bird, and then dare it to punch me in the face. Because if I'm going to get punched in the face, I am going to deserve it. This is very similar to a scene in Good Will Hunting, a fantastic film with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in it, who both wrote and directed it, and starred in it. I will leave a link to that in the description, like I will leave everything else I've referenced here in the description, so I don't have to keep repeating myself. In that film, when he talks about child abuse, his father used to beat him, but before he would beat him, he would point to a belt and a wrench, and he gave him a choice. Which one was it going to be? When Matt Damon's character was asked by Robin Williams' character, which one did he choose? Robin Williams said he would have picked the belt because he is too afraid of everything else and getting hurt. Matt Damon said, I picked the wrench because fuck you, that's why. Matt Damon picked the wrench because he would not let his spirit get destroyed by his father, no matter how much he hurt. And this reminds me of a funny joke my dad used to tell me about 3 guys who traveled down the river and were caught by cannibals. The cannibals were kind enough to show them some mercy and say, choose how you will die. One guy drank poison and died immediately. The cannibals skinned him and turned his flesh into part of their boat. The next guy shot himself in the face. Same thing happened. They skinned him and took his flesh to make it into a boat. The final guy instead grabbed a fork off the table and began to stab himself, puncturing holes in his flesh, and said, to hell with you cannibals and your flesh boat. Well, that kind of defiance is something that I've been adopting recently, because no matter how difficult life gets, you always have a choice to have audacity and to create new choices beyond the ones that are presented to you. We're programmed to think there's very limited options, but very rarely do we create our own options, which is part of the just do shit philosophy. Another thing that I have seen as a meme in social media is the men and bears idea. The idea that many women feel so unsafe around men between being around bears and around strange men. They would rather be around bears. For me, I just find that hilarious because, on the one hand, it's an oversimplification of a big issue because, yes, there needs to be more safety for women in public. On the other hand, the men who are very defensive of it don't realize there are many things women have to deal with that men don't typically think of. It is called the penis privilege. So, with that penis privilege, there are many things that we don't consider that women unfortunately have to consider every single moment of their life. Whether it's a guy who is about to screw them over literally or figuratively, or how many times that they will be looked over. But one thing is common between those two groups, arguing online, which is why I find them both ridiculous and laughable. All those people who complain about this are making it about themselves, and none of them have actually been in nature or been confronted with a bear or been in nature with other men and women. Because I've spent some time in nature recently, and I can say we don't think about those things. What we think about is our own survival. And, again, even the people I can't stand, no matter how much I want to smack some people in the face, I will not turn my back on them if someone is struggling. I will carry their bag for them if they need help, and they will offer water to me if I am thirsty. The best of you will come out when you're in nature, just like the worst of you will come out in nature and survival. This, to me, shows a huge disconnect from ourselves and from each other and nature, as I mentioned earlier. And that disconnect has always been there in previous generations. It's not just a technology thing, it's not just a social media thing. We are just seeing it become more prevalent because of social media, and the great thing is more and more people are opening up about it, so you don't feel so alone about it. Let me bring you back to an old example from the late esteemed author Charles Bukowski, or as Germans would pronounce it, Charles Bukowski. In his novel Ham on Rye, it is a thinly veiled self-insert of his own childhood, where his skin condition and his socioeconomic status as a working-class kid during the Great Depression caused him a lot of problems. So he likened himself to being Frankenstein's monster, constantly getting into fights to prove himself even when he couldn't win, getting drunk because it was his way of bonding and escaping from the world, and accepting no matter what people said about his appearance or his failure in life, as a student or as a worker. The impulsivity and the compulsivity to fight, no matter how ridiculous it was, is what kept him going, to prove that he was validated, to prove that he was significant. Towards the end of the novel, as they are announcing Pearl Harbor has been bombed, and people are rushing to the recruitment office, he's distracted by a game with a little kid. Instead of running to the recruitment office to be an adult and find some purpose in his life, he instead makes it his raison d'etre to win in this game against a small child where he has every obvious advantage over. This is social media. This is the disconnect from ourselves and each other. We do ridiculous things to feel. Not just to feel validated, but to feel. To feel worthy, to feel important, to feel alive. To be seen, to be heard. On the other end of that, we have not just this hell that we've created, but we have this kind of debauchery, which is supposed to be a paradise, since we live in the safest time in the world, in spite of all the wars that we hear about, and all the diseases like the previous pandemic. There's a Twilight Zone episode where a man dies and he thinks he's gone to heaven. Everything just works out. He wins in every poker game and slot machine. He has all the food he loves. Everything just works out for him, but he gets bored. Eventually, he asks, "Hey, take me to the other place." The other guy, who's there, laughs at him and says, "What are you talking about? This is the other place." Yes, you can suffer when everything seems perfect, because you need that kind of growth. It is what the philosophy of yin and yang is. Nothing is absolute. You need a little darkness to see the light, and you need a little light to see the shadows. This is also something you will see in stories from Hinduism and Vedic philosophy. The asuras, known as the demons, who represent our darker impulses and drives, and the gods, or the devas, who represent our higher selves and the virtues, needed to come together in order to churn the milk sea to get the sacred nectar of immortality at the bottom. Yes, you couldn't do this through virtue alone. Yes, you would never be able to do that with your lower impulses and drives. Those two need to work together. And even then, when you work together as a complete being, you're not going to immediately get the nectar. You're going to stir the muck at the bottom of the milky ocean. And underneath that muck is the nectar of immortality. With the nectar of immortality, which is promised to the demons, but really is for the higher self, and is reserved for the higher self. From that nectar of immortality came the divine feminine in the form of Lakshmi, or Lalita. And she said, True wealth and abundance comes from anything I give you. Don't question it. It's not all good, and bad is not necessarily all bad. When you understand this wisdom, you will understand abundance. A simpler way of putting that is another story where people, when they were hiding from the invaders, buried a golden Buddha beneath the earth. But during the conflict, they completely forgot about the golden Buddha there. Centuries later, someone found something shining in the dirt. And as he dug and dug and dug, more people came, and they found beneath that dirt, centuries of dirt and mud, was the golden Buddha. That is your highest self that you've forgotten about, underneath all the mud and the dirt, at the bottom of the Milky Ocean, underneath all the muck, that only comes to the surface when you stir it together with your higher self and your lower impulses. A similar story there is about how life kicks our asses, just like that meme. There is a lump of clay dug beneath the earth. The clay does not want to be separated from the earth that it knew it was part of. The master says, "Just trust me." And he starts beating the lump of clay. The lump of clay is in extreme pain. It's saying, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you hurting me?" The master says, "Just trust me, it's part of the process." "I hate this, just stop." "Do you trust me or not?" says the master. Clay says, "I'll trust you, but I don't like this." He says, "You don't have to, you just need to trust me." Eventually, when the beating stops, the clay thinks, "Oh great, it's finally over." Nope, the master tosses him into the fire, and he starts burning. The lump of clay starts crying aloud, saying, "What are you doing to me?" The master says, "Do you still trust me?" The clay says, "Yes, I do." Then just wait. Eventually, underneath all of that suffering, the clay became a beautiful work of art, a beautiful piece of pottery that all the beating and all the firing was necessary to chisel it away. The pot looked at itself and said, "Wow, is this what I really was the entire time?" The master said, "Yes, and you couldn't see it, but I could." So, from that point, we can say, hey, life will shape us if we let it. But at the same time, why should we wait to let life shape us, especially if we aren't paying attention? Especially if there is no predestination and there's only free will. Again, I don't believe in those absolutes, but I believe that we can still seize the day. There is a scene in the movie Fight Club where Edward Norton's character Jack is talking to his boss, who's threatening to fire him. Edward Norton grins and says, "Actually, I have a better idea," and starts beating himself and screaming, begging for mercy. The boss looks at him completely confused and horrified. Security and other workers come in and ask what's happened, and they only see Edward Norton's character on his knees begging for his life. The boss says he doesn't know what's going on. Edward Norton says, "Please, enough, just stop." Security takes him away, and he gets a massive payoff, a massive severance package. He beat himself instead of letting life beat him. Just like the guy with the cannibals stabbed his own flesh. So, returning to this, I have no idea what I'm going to do after my final climb in a couple weeks. But as I said, I've learned a lot of my own value when in nature. I'm not reliant on technology. I'm not reliant on my tools. But I know what I can offer, and it's just translating that core idea of what I am and what I have into this material reality, this illusory world. Part of that can include my martial life philosophy and the actual skills and qualities I've developed from it, because they have helped me not just with my attitude, but also with the skills needed to survive, along with the physical development of the fascia, tendons, and joints, and the muscles. I may not be a qualified therapist or coach, but there are a lot of things that you can glean from this that have helped me. I may have had teachers who were not the best examples of how to live, but I succeeded both because of them and in spite of them, which is something a number of my students can say, which is why they run to me for guidance and learning. Even when we're just chatting casually, I hear them typing away and making notes, because there are insights that they derive inadvertently from what we talk about. I will be whoever I need to be for anyone. If I need to be someone's terrorist, if I need to be someone's psycho, if I need to be someone's whatever, their serial killer, because that's what they perceive me as. Let them think that's what I am. That is the me that exists in their head, but they are not the me that I really am. I'm not even the me that exists in my own head. I'm whoever I need to be at any given moment in life. That is how I know whether I am the beggar, the loser, the guy with no guidance in his life, or the creative genius, the guy on the spectrum, the neurodivergent, the artist, the writer, the mountaineer, the fighter, the dog lover, the Xennial, the third culture kid. I'm whatever I need to be and whoever I need to be. Sometimes I inspire people, sometimes I repulse people. But I'm alive. These are things that remind me. I'm a human being. I'm alive. And I mean something, damn it. I'm worth something. And yet, I'm also a speck of dust, insignificant. And that's perfectly fine. After all, no mud, no lotus. So instead of hiding from life and bemoaning, woe is me, this is like the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna, afraid of killing his family, killing his brothers, and the fate that has befallen upon him to go into war, seeing the futility of life and conflict, is approached by Krishna, who says, "Get your head out of your asshole, stop hiding in the woods. This is your dharma. This is what's meant to be. What you see now is not the totality of reality, or the plan, the cosmic plan. Accept this as it is, because it's your purpose. And there's more than what you see that we can see, the higher intelligences. And that is what the just do shit philosophy means to me, and that is what I am talking about here. Similarly, no matter how much suffering we endure, that suffering is a choice. If we look at the myth of Sisyphus from Greek myth, and Albert Camus' discussion of that, of how he is punished by the gods to push a boulder up a hill for all of eternity, and only for it to roll down once it reaches there, or just before it reaches. How Sisyphus rises above it is, instead of treating it as punishment, he learns to love it no matter what, defying the gods. One of my favorite video games, Hades, even has a nice reference to that, and a reference to the Tom Hanks film, Castaway. He carves a smiley face into the boulder and calls it Boldy, and talks to it, just like Tom Hanks talks to his volleyball and calls it Wilson. So, no matter what suffering happens in my life, financially, emotionally, socially, whatever, I will learn to just accept everything. Just like our Marshall philosophy says, say yes more. Again, no mud, no lotus. An inspiring individual I can think of is John McAvoy, a British convict who is known for his rowing. While he came from a very difficult background that landed him in the slammer, when he discovered rowing and we discovered that his mind was more of a prison than the cell he lived in, he would not only practice rowing outside, he would practice rowing in his own cell, to the point that when they tried to break him, he said, "Nope, I will stay in my cell and I will practice here and I will love it." He was free the moment he realized it and that he was in control of himself. On the subject of prisoners and jail, What I can also say is one of my favorite pieces of philosophy here is that there are no bad people, only bad decisions. And even then, those bad decisions are necessary for your growth. Part of my bad decisions are what led me to this moment. When I'm in nature, my ability to analyze, to improvise, my humor, my esotericism, my uniqueness. Yeah, I stand out from the crowd here, not just because I'm a foreigner, but because people distinctly know who I am, and that's what leads to make them care about me. It leads them to care about me. So, if I can survive in nature with my wits and shitty equipment, I can thrive in the material illusion that we live in. So going back to men and bears, those people who don't spend time in nature and continue to caricature each other and reinforce the disconnect, not only are they like the frogs in the well, they are like the three blind men holding an elephant's trunk, hide, and tusk respectively, and all thinking that they have the definitive answer of what an elephant is, but those are only fractions of reality. The key is not to think that your hole is better than the other hole. Again, no kinkiness implied. It's to dig the walls and widen the hole and realize you're all in this together. You don't go into one hole here or one hole here. You dig your hole. You open the walls so that you're all together at the bottom of the earth. And then you realize you don't have to stay there. You can jump out anytime. And when you're suffering, you can still have a good time. Think of an old classic episode of The Simpsons, where Bart Simpson is about to be killed by Sideshow Bob. What does Bart Simpson do? For his last request, he says, "How about you perform the entirety of the HMS Pinafore?" Playing to Sideshow Bob's ego, and also recognizing his talent in art and theater, Sideshow Bob agrees. The entire time, he distracts Sideshow Bob. In the original episode, it's just long enough for them to reach the police, and he's saved. In the Halloween special, an alternate timeline has Sideshow Bob recognizing that he's been played, and he kills Bart. But either way, Bart Simpson enjoyed his life in that moment, right before he either lived to see another day because he got creative, or he died happily. So many philosophies are encapsulated in that. Carpe Diem, Amor, Fati, joie de vivre, raison d'être, mono no aware, bahala na, jayen yen. Let's go over those in that moment. Carpe Diem, seize the day. Bart Simpson sees an opportunity. We have but one death. Not YOLO, you only live once. You live every day and every single moment. Carpe Diem. So, seize the day. Create your own opportunities. Amor Fati. Remember it's the love of fate. So, if you're going to die, you're going to die on your own terms. Memento Mori. Remember your death. If he's going to die and he's going to love his fate, then, you know what? Let us enjoy a happy death. Joie de vivre. The joy of living. Bart Simpson's joy of living is to be a jackass. It gives him joy. That is his raison d'être. His reason for being is to be a little jackass, a little smartass, and have fun. He is a trickster, like Coyote in myth, like Hermes in myth, like Loki in myth. Mono no aware. Life is fleeting. Remember that life is just a brief moment of reality. It's an illusion. So, are we going to cry about it? Are we going to hide from life? Or are we going to accept that we have very little time in this existence? Bahala na. Well, that's life. No matter what happens, it is a life. Jayen yen. Let it be. take it easy. What can you do if life is tough? So, with all those philosophies encapsulated in that one scene in The Simpsons, I now think of a friend of mine I made when I was climbing on my very first summit. He wears a bra and sometimes a skirt when posing for photos at every summit. There are people who judge him for that, and at times he's a bit shy about it, and he even told me, "Hey, I hope you don't judge me for this, but this is what I like to do." My response is this: no matter what happens, he is my friend. If homophobes judge him for that, they'll also have to deal with me because I will wear a bra, and I will wear a skirt alongside him because he's my friend. And when they're doing that, I will say a very, very profound mantra I learned from the ancient land of northern Saxony in Germany that my friend taught me. Kanama, kanama, kanama ha, kanama ha, kanama ha. Anyway, whatever it is, who cares? This is where I am right now. Who cares about my finances? Who cares about what I'm meant to be or who I am or what I'm meant to do? I'm almost done with my journey. When I meditated upon what I was going to do and what's the best thing I could do, my intuition came with two things. 1, finish your journey. 2, enjoy your journey. So, for the next couple of weeks, that is what I will do. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next videos.